to preparing for a return trip home. Saturday evening, Commander Jim Halsell, pilot Scott Horowitz, and flight engineer Jeff Williams successfully fired Atlantis' steering jets and verified the performance of the various aero surfaces that will be used during Atlantis' return to Earth. This checkout is a routine activity on the day prior to landing to verify that all required systems are operating as expected. As Halsell, Horowitz, and Williams conducted their work from the flight deck, crewmates Mary Ellen Weber, Jim Voss, Susan Helms, and Yuri Usachoff continued stowing equipment used over the past 9 days in orbit.
Now just about to make landfall over the western edge of Central America as it continues on track for a landing at the Kennedy Space Center, now distant from the landing site 1,200 miles. Atlantis' speed continuing to decrease as it is in the densest regions of the Earth's atmosphere. Traveling at a speed now of 12,600 miles per hour. Time to touchdown, 16 minutes, 42 seconds. And Atlantis' flight control surfaces are now beginning to become active. Atlantis now traveling at a speed of 12,000 miles per hour. Its altitude continuing to sink at the rate of about 117 miles per hour at an altitude now of 38 miles. Downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, 1,046 miles. Time to touchdown, 16 minutes. Atlantis continues on track for landing at the Kennedy Space Center, now just beginning to cross over the tip of the Yucatan Peninsula at an altitude of 37 statute miles. Atlantis' speed now 11,100 miles per hour. It's about 900 miles away from the landing site at the Kennedy Space Center. Time to touchdown now, just 15 minutes. All systems on board are continuing to perform very well. In just about 2.5 minutes, Atlantis should acquire a communication link through the tracking station located at Merritt Island. At that point, we may be fortunate enough to get some views through the heads-up display, the pilot's point-of-view camera. Atlantis now traveling at a speed of 9,600 miles per hour. It's about 700 miles away from the Kennedy Space Center. Its altitude now decreasing to 34 miles, dropping at the rate of about 88 feet per second. Time to touchdown now, 13 minutes and 50 seconds. Now just 13 minutes away from touchdown at runway 15 at the Kennedy Space Center. Atlantis still 535 miles away from that landing site. Its altitude has decreased to 32 statute miles. That's decreasing at the rate of about 133 feet per second. All systems on board the orbiter are continuing to perform well. as Atlantis crosses out over the Gulf of Mexico on its way to make landfall over the western coast of Florida, just over Sarasota, Florida, as it heads in for runway 15 at the Kennedy Space Center. Atlantis' speed now 7,200 miles per hour, about 32 miles in altitude, and away from the Kennedy Space Center at a distance of 450 miles. $11 minutes.
Atlantis, Houston, take TACANS.
Atlantis is now receiving navigation aid through 3 redundant tactical navigation aids aboard the orbiter. Atlantis traveling at a speed of 5,900 miles per hour. Still 359 miles to go before it touches down at runway 15 at the Kennedy Space Center. Time to touch down now, just 11 minutes.
Atlantis, energy, ground track, and nav are go. Touchdown 2,600 feet at 205 knots.
Copy all.
The flight control team is now tracking Atlantis with ground radar, confirming Atlantis' location and position in preparation for landing. Touchdown now, just 10 minutes, 30 seconds away. Atlantis' speed and altitude both continuing to decrease. Atlantis traveling at a speed now of 4,900 miles per hour. Its altitude down to 27 miles. Still 271 miles to go to the Kennedy Space Center, runway 15. Altitude continuing to drop at the rate of about 256 feet per second. Time to touch down now, 10 minutes. Nine minutes and 20 seconds away from touchdown at the Kennedy Space Center. Atlantis now at an altitude of 24 miles. 193 miles away from the Kennedy Space Center, traveling at a speed of 3,800 miles per hour, or Mach 5.6. All systems continuing to perform well on board. The flight control team here continuing to monitor Atlantis' progress as it approaches the landing site at the Kennedy Space Center. As Atlantis passes through Mach 5, the crew has deployed the air data probes. That information is evaluated by the flight dynamics officer and the guidance and navigation officer here in Mission Control. We'll shortly make a call to the crew to take air data and incorporate that information into its navigation system. Atlantis now traveling at 2,900 miles per hour down to Mach 4.2. Time to touchdown now, just 7 minutes and 55 seconds. 123 miles away from the Kennedy Space Center, losing altitude at the rate of 249 feet per second.
we like air data if you do?
Atlantis, take air data.
Take air data.
And that call to take air data allows the air data probes to provide Atlantis' general purpose computers with some additional information on dynamic pressure, airspeed, and altitude. That helps to refine its navigation information. Atlantis now traveling at a speed of 1,900 miles an hour, still 80 miles away from the Kennedy Space Center, traveling at a speed of 1,800 miles per hour now, at an altitude of 16 miles. Time to touchdown now, just 6 minutes and 35 seconds. And this view now is through the pilot point of view camera, as Atlantis is just about 65 miles away from the Kennedy Space Center as it approaches runway 15, traveling at a speed of 1,500 miles an hour now. Its altitude is just about 60 miles and passing through Mach 2, or 2 times the speed of sound. Again, all systems continuing to perform well.
Atlantis, Houston, you are on energy approaching the hack. Your winds, pure crosswind, 7 peak 10 from the right. Nominal, shoot, deploy.
Copy the crosswind, copy nominal, shoot deploy.
Atlantis is right on track and in position for its landing at the Kennedy Space Center. A time to touchdown now, just 4 minutes and 45 seconds. Atlantis continuing to travel at a speed of 780 miles an hour, just about to go subsonic. Its altitude now just 10 miles. It's away from the landing site at a distance of 34 miles. And this view of Atlantis from the long-range tracking cameras, infrared cameras, as Atlantis approaches the landing site at the Kennedy Space Center. And with touchdown now just about 4 minutes away, Commander Jim Halsell will begin to select the pitch, roll, and yaw, control of the speed brake. And Commander Jim Halsell is now in manual control of Atlantis as it approaches the landing site at the Kennedy Space Center. Now just 3 minutes and 15 seconds away from touchdown. Atlantis now distant from the landing site at about 20 miles, traveling at a speed of 530 miles per hour. Commander Jim Halsell now beginning to initiate a
Atlantis, on at the 180.
Copy, on at the 180.
And Atlantis is now approaching the heading alignment cylinder. Commander Jim Halsell will execute a left overhead turn. Continuing to fly manually, that turn now in progress in this view of Atlantis from the infrared cameras at the Kennedy Space Center. Time to touchdown now, just 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
Atlantis on at the 90.
Copy, on at the 90.
And that call confirming that Atlantis is now well into turning into its turn to align it with the runway. Runway 15 at the Kennedy Space Center in this view from the pilot point of view camera as Atlantis approaches the landing site at the Kennedy Space Center. Atlantis now traveling at a speed of 415 miles per hour. Its altitude now is only about 2.5 miles. Just 9 miles away from the Kennedy Space Center. Time to touchdown now, 1 minute and 35 seconds.
Runway inside Houston.
Roger.
Commander Jim Halsell advising that he has the runway in sight. The runway lights visible in this view through the pilot point of view camera. Time to touchdown now, just 1 minute and 10 seconds. Just 50 seconds from touchdown now at an altitude of 3,100 feet. "30 seconds from touchdown, the runway clearly visible as Commander Jim Halsell brings Atlantis in for a landing. And the gear is down and locked. And main gear touchdown. Atlantis rolling out on runway 15 at the Kennedy Space Center and nose gear touchdown. And an on-time landing at the Kennedy Space Center. Atlantis now on runway 15 at the Kennedy Space Center.
Wheel stop, Houston.
Roger, wheel stop Atlantis. Jim, congratulations to you and the crew on just a super mission to the International Space Station. There are no immediate post-landing deltas, and we'll meet you on page 5-3 of the entry checklist.
To Commander Jim Halsell from the flight control team here in Houston, as relayed by spacecraft communicator Rick Sturkow. The crew will now begin the process of configuring their vehicle, safing the vehicle.
Miles around the cabin here. Appreciate your help.
Roger.